and welcome into the Gaming Discourse. I am Tyler Frater alongside Richard D. the Cruz.
Hello.
And Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
Hello.
It is Tuesday, August 16th, 2022. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at the Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse, where we post videos. Go check out the newest video for Ruins Magus. It's a review. Ruins Magus, a VR shooter. You play as a mage, you go diving into dungeons. It's a lot of fun, some very cinematic moments. Check out the review. One of the better VR games I've played in a while. Patreon.com/The Gaming Discourse, where you can subscribe and you get all kinds of goodies. You may get your name in the credits of our videos and our podcasts.
It's not a
depending on
not
the
random
level.
chance.
A few credits just went by. We do have news. We'll be talking about Microsoft, with just Microsoft unleashed all kinds of things, talking with Brazil, a Brazil regulatory agency, lots of documents spewing lots of interesting things. And just today, Kotaku published a story about working conditions at Nintendo. So,
oh boy,
yeah, that'll be interesting to give a look. But before all that, what have we been playing, Connor?
not a whole lot.
Go. Okay.
It was a long week at work, so I'm just
Sure.
playing what I can, and just ended up playing Skyrim while I was on break most of the time. So
Any new revelations?
not really. Just Skyrim.
Are people? What's the last biggest thing people found in Skyrim? Like, has everything been found?
I don't know.
I feel like there has
assume
to be a
so.
secret somewhere still.
You think so?
I don't know. I guess we don't hear anything about Fallout 3 or New Vegas anymore. So.
Yeah, there was something that people found in Breath of the Wild. I don't know if you saw that story.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was, but it was something.
A missing pixel.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, okay.
Yeah, it was just like, okay, sure.
Interesting. All right.
At least that's the one I saw. That was this week.
Oh, okay.
I
it
thought
was,
you were talking about the.
it was something in the fort, like the guys that eat bananas.
That might have been something different then.
Like the cult that comes to attack you, and sometimes they
the
pretend
Yiga clan? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's something to do with them. but I
Oh,
don't
yeah. Okay. Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, somebody found that there's a pattern to like the NPCs that they inhabit.
remember. Oh, okay.
So when you're out and about and the NPCs like will like ambush you, there's a pattern to that. So that's all.
Okay, interesting. Well then, Richard.
Hey,
have
I
you been
have
playing?
been dabbling in a lot of things this week. I got a little further into Stray, but not too much. I kind of want a game about the robots. I just kind of want a game about the robots. I love messing with them. I love their interactions, and I love how they kind of inhabit the world and how they kind of operate in there. It is interesting that you kind of have questions of like, they're drinking and eating, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
How did they like? Are they just copying human behavior, or what is the deal?
So when
with
it kind of
like,
comes off,
right?
Because there are bars with bartenders.
Yeah.
But it's like they clearly don't have like any. It's like they're just sort of emulating what humans did. Yeah.
It's very cool to see everybody's expressions, depending on what you do. Well, not depending on what you do, but when you meow at them, there are some that are very like delightful and very fun to watch, and then there are others where it's just like, "Wow, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bother you." Because I think there's just a lone guy above in the bar by a pool table is just reading a newspaper, and if you meow at him, he gets pissed at you. And it's just like, "Oh wow, hey, you've never seen me before," but all right.
Right.
I thought it was funny just from a develop like gameplay standpoint, but there's a part where you have to set a transmitter on the very top of a tower, and when you do that, you have to take an elevator shaft all the way up. You have to avoid enemies, and it's a very long way up. And I find it funny that after you do that, you have to get down, and there just happens to be a power line with a bucket on it for you to jump in and just go all the way down. And it's just like, okay. Like, normally I don't question stuff like that because it's a video game, but it is just kind of like, sure, like it's just there. What purpose does this serve?
I mean, the cat looks really cute.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Hanging over
No,
the
right. I have no qualms when it comes to like that or anything, but it is just like this is out of place like type. So
Okay.
that's about it.
Ding.
Yeah, so that's about as far as it goes. I'm gonna I have to like make my way down to the sewers now and everything. So I played a bit of that. I finished Dragon Quest XI, kind of. I beat it. I got to the end, but there's also a to be continued. Did I talk about this already? I don't know if I did. There's a third act. So the game actually technically ends at the second act. But there's a whole third act, and I do actually really appreciate it. I don't think I'm going to do the second act. I understand there's more story and stuff, but I appreciate the third act because, let me back up that statement. I appreciate two events that happens in Dragon Quest XI. There's a death of a character, and then there is the final boss battle where you kind of win and save the world. And both of those events are somewhat approached in a very nonchalant way. The death is approached very emotionally, which worked very well, and I enjoyed it a lot, but it was also very like, oh, this character is dead. Like, there's no slow, like, oh, I'm dying, let me say my final. It's just, no, this character's just dead.
Dunzo.
Yeah, right. And that's, like, death doesn't give a shit. You're dead. Like, so I thought that was really cool, and I appreciated that very much. And the second thing, the ending, is also very much like that. When you beat the final boss, or if there was to be a final boss in like our real life or whatever, I mean, I know that's silly, but no one's going to be there to cheer you on or anything. Like, everybody's going to be like gone running. So when you beat the boss, there's just going to be this kind of like
silence.
Guess we'll just go home. Like, what do we do now? We just go home. And so that's kind of like what happens. Like, you beat the boss, and it's just like, well, what do we do now? It's like, well, go home, I guess. Mm-hmm. And then that's it. Like, that's technically the end of the game. And I thought that was really cool because it may be a fantasy setting, but yeah, like, nobody's going to go to the epicenter of where everything's going on to like see you defeat this thing.
I wonder if there's a famous scene in the third movie of a really famous fantasy trilogy where characters return from an adventure and it seems like nobody knows what happens. One that maybe Richard hasn't seen yet. But anyway.
Maybe. But it was cool. And from what I understand, the third act, you probably know more than I do, Connor. Mm-hmm. The third act is a lot of continuous world building and what happens afterwards, which is neat. Like, you kind of go back in and it's just like, well, let's go visit all the places that we did before and see how they're doing and what's happening now for them.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, and
so
I think
a lot of closure.
Yeah, a lot of closure, and then I think there is something else major that happens, but I'm still deciding on if I want to. But highly enjoyable game. I liked it a lot. But if you play it normally, it's going to take you forever. Holy shit.
Man, I couldn't even imagine. Yeah,
there is. I don't remember if it's in the second or third act. Censor this part, then you can tell me.
Time travel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the third act.
Third act, okay.
Yeah. It's okay if you're listening and they don't know what they're talking about, because I don't know what they're talking about either.
It's been 4 years.
It's still fresh-ish. People are still
so it's a major plot point in the third act? Kind of, not really?
Kind of.
But it's not essential to the main plot line?
I think it allows you to, I can't remember specifically, but it allows you to go back and undo some events that happened.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. Whoa, weird. So there's time travel? Kind of? Oh, okay.
Oh, there's a lot of like major things that characters can do, particularly like the queen, the mermaid queen.
Yeah.
Which she's freaking cool. I love her. But yeah, she can just like do things. She's kind of ethereal. Like, she can kind of see the future and she can kind of like control like aspects or help out whenever she can. But yeah, there's definitely lots of things that characters can do, but it's just depending on if they do it or not is
okay.
left up to the writers. But
anything else?
I played a bit of Tower of Fantasy, which is a new game that came out this last week that is very much being discussed online by lots of people as kind of like a competitor to Genshin Impact. So it has the same open world-esque vibes as Genshin Impact and Breath of the Wild, but set in kind of like a sci-fi space like setting.
Okay.
So I played a bit of that. I do not like very long tutorials. and this one has a very long tutorial, but I think it's only long because it's stuff that I do all the time in other games, and it's all set up exactly the same way. I'm going to teach you how to do this. Oh no, something happened that you need to do that for, and then characters are just talking about stuff that I don't really like care about as of now. It's because it's all just standard setup stuff. It's nothing that's like meat and bones and whatnot. Instead of a glider, or a glider like Breath of the Wild to Genshin Impact, you have a jetpack that does not work as well, nor is as cool, in my opinion.
Those are two huge strikes against the jetpack.
Well, yeah. You go up, like when you activate the jetpack, you just go straight up, and then you can go from wherever you want to, like Valkyrie and Apex Legends. But like when you jump off and if I were to jump off and activate a glider, I could just go where I want to, but it seems very awkward when I want to do that in Tower of Fantasy. But, once again, I've only played so much so far, so I'm probably just haven't gotten the groove to it. In Tower of Fantasy, unlike Genshin Impact, you create your character. And so with Genshin, since every character is unique and different, you will have to, gain enough, they call them fates to summon these characters so that you can play as them. In Tower of Fantasy, what you do is you summon a weapon. So you summon better weapons that you can use, scythes, swords, guns, bows, etc. But they do this interesting thing. Well, I say it's interesting. I think it's kind of useless. Where if you get a very special weapon, like in games they're graded like CBA, SSR, SSR. Like that's how good it gets. If you get an SR or above, you get a weapon that belonged to a specific legendary character in that world. And if you equip it, you can choose to just use that weapon as yourself or just turn into that character, which I don't get why I would want to do that if I make my character. I want to make my character play as my character, not like another. Sure. I mean, there's other people who could, turn into that legendary character, but then it's like you'll see 20 of that legendary character running around. It's not so legendary, is it? So it's kind of this little weird thing. But that's their like gotcha pull mechanic, which will remain to be seen how it operates. But Tower of Fantasy definitely seems more like an MMO-esque game rather than Genshin Impact, which is actually a single player game with light co-op elements. So that's what differentiates those two, really. But those were the 3 that I played this week.
Okie dokie. So I made a review about Ruins Magus. Go check it out. I talked about it that past few weeks, so I'll skip it here. I've been getting more into Baldur's Gate, the Enhanced Edition on Switch. Baldur's Gate is very good. It's old, but it has held up extremely well. I don't know what they have changed between the Enhanced Edition and original Baldur's Gate. I'm sure there are UI things that are different and stuff like that. But as far as writing, gameplay, stuff like that, I think it is one of the more modern old games I've ever played, if that makes sense. Because when you play older games, sometimes you come across stuff and it's like, you think to yourself, yeah, if this were made today, they wouldn't have done this. Because this feels like something old that game designers have figured out how to not do today, right? But I'm sure there's some of that in Baldur's Gate, but it feels pretty streamlined and pretty cool. And now it's aged, it's kind of charming because the sprites look cool and stuff like that. I was showing you guys the sprites before the podcast, and what was I going to say? But it is difficult because it is a crapshoot. And it's dice rolls. So, I was going through a mine, and this mine had kobolds in it, and kobolds are like goblins, essentially. Yeah. And some of them have arrows, some of them have bows and arrows, some of them have swords. And so, if I encountered a kobold, what happens in Baldur's Gate, as soon as you encounter combat, time pauses, game's paused, you can give all your party orders and stuff. So usually what I do is if I can tell that the enemy has a sword, I will let them run toward me instead of running at them. Because what happens if you run at them is
you reveal more.
You reveal more enemies and then they activate. So I try and let enemies come to me and run to my melee fighters, and then just take them out that way. But every now and then they'd have a bow and arrow, and so I'd have to like rush them because they won't rush you if they have a bow and arrow. And they could just decide, hey, I'm going to aim for the main character, and it's just one shot kill. It just kills my main character because they just so happen to roll really well, and there's not a whole lot I can do to avoid that, and so they just snipe my character.
Well, you're also playing a sorcerer.
It's literally the scene from Saving Private Ryan. My main character gets shot. One of my fighters hiding behind a rock says, he was on the ground before we heard the shot, and the game's over. So I have to reload and figure. So anyway, but then again, sometimes they decide they're going to shoot one of my fighters, and they miss or they hit, but it's 4 damage to my fighter, which is nothing because they have like 26 health, while my sorceress, which is my main character, only starts with 4 health.
Made of tissue paper. Yeah,
and you can't wear armor as a sorceress or a mage. So but those things don't really bother me because it's part of the game. It's an RPG, it's part of the challenge. So I don't think it's old game design or anything like that. Losing a party member sucks right now, because there are ways to revive party members, but if a party member dies, they're dead. You have to revive them. So in like Pillars of Eternity, there are 2 healths. There is the character's health moment to moment, and then there's like I forget exactly how it works, but then there's their
soul health,
like critical health, where if they take enough critical damage, they can die. But if they lose their normal health, which I may be considered stamina, it's like they pass out.
They're down.
They're down. And then once combat ends, they stand back up, but they don't have a lot of health. And if you go through a dungeon and that happens 2 or 3 times, then then that character will die. So there's ways where you don't encounter a cobalt and get sniped in the face and your character's just dead in Pillars of Eternity. But Baldur's Gate isn't like that. So one thing that's a little aggravating is if a character dies in combat, I just have to restart
Saves
the combat. Yeah, I just reload a save because I'm not going to figure out how to get my characters back. And I just never know if some random cobalt, rolls a crit and takes out half damage on one of my characters. And then as I'm trying to get that character out of the way, the cobalt still decides to shoot an arrow and kills them. Like there's not a whole lot I can do about that. And so instead of, figuring out how to revive enemy or revive teammates and I know you can do it at a temple, but the temples that I've been to, I haven't unlocked reviving dead characters yet. I'm not sure how to. And then I went online, and apparently the sorceress gets revive undead, whatever, at level 14. Well, Baldur's Gate, D&D, you level up extremely slowly. So I'm level 2, and I'm probably 10 hours into the game. And I just read in a Reddit post somewhere like, yeah, by the end of the game, you're only going to be like, level 10, 11. So I'm like, shit! So I'm not unlocking Revive Dead. So I'll have to figure out, see if there's other ways where I can mitigate. Because I want to eventually get to a point where...
You don't have to save scum.
Where if a character does die, I can run back to a temple and revive them with coin. I will do that. And in some ways, I'm not totally... and listen, that's how the save system works. People can use it however they want. But I do, when a game does offer you where you can just save at any time outside of combat, I do try and take my decisions and things seriously, So if I survive combat and it goes really poorly, but I survive, I won't restart combat to try and get a different result. I'll just accept that. Yeah. Okay. If I pick up a weapon and... I don't know, the weapon breaks, or I cast a spell. I start combat and cast a spell, and it's really important for the spell to land, and that spell doesn't land. I just sort of go with it. But yeah, right now I'm having a lot of fun with it. The writing's really good. The story is really interesting. And yeah, it makes me excited because you can export your character from the first Baldur's Gate to the second one.
Oh, cool. That's
so,
awesome.
And I'm assuming you export, you go from level to level. If you level 10 in the first 2 Baldur's Gates, or the first Baldur's Gate and expansions, I'm assuming it doesn't start you at level 1 in Baldur's Gate 2. I don't know. That would suck, because I think the idea is once you get to the end of Baldur's Gate 2, you're like a super epic fantasy character, where you started off at level 1. But yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with that. Works great on the Switch. No complaints there. And I'm playing another game, and this is a game I've wanted to make a video of for a long time, and I'm still in the process of deciding if I want to or not. Into the Radius VR.
Oh, you're going back to it,
which is Stalker in VR, with some interesting differences. Obviously, it's influenced by that sort of thing.
But you did do a video.
Yeah, you did.
I did a long time ago. It was in early access.
Okay.
I've been wanting to do one. It has
video.
since left early access. There's been a lot of changes to it, and I've since wanted to go back. And I never, like, I played 10 hours and I stopped. I didn't advance through the story at all. I didn't see a whole lot of the game environments. So I wanted to sort of save it until it finally released. And it has, and I'm having fun with it. But there are still signs that the game is not complete yet. Well, I mean, there are still some early access things in it. Like, for example, today I was in a building, and I was looking around for this object I had to pick up for a mission. And I walked straight through a wall into another building that you're not supposed to go into. And this building was empty. It was just there, part of the environment. But I was like, oh, okay, so I just walked into this wall, I walked around this building, there was nothing there, and I walked out the same way I came in, and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And that's, that happens once, that's fine, but I have found, while playing Into the Radius, last time, when I played a few months ago, I found a similar thing, and I even got to a point where I went into a place and I couldn't get back out, and I don't know why it was made this way. Which really killed, because beforehand it was all really intense, but then it sort of ruined it. So I'm like, okay, well, so that's why I wanted to let it develop a bit more. And so I've been playing it, and Into the Radius is, but the big addition that I am optimistic about is they added a difficulty where you can change up a lot of the game. You can change up how many enemies there are, the density of enemies. You can change up how easily enemies detect you, damage, player damage, how the map works, if you see your own position on the map, or if you have to use landmarks to sort of guide your way around. There is a thing in the game called the Tide, which is in Breath of the Wild. You play for a few hours, you kill a couple baddies, and then Link, oh no! And then the world resets and all the enemies are back. It's the same thing. So into the Radius, you go through a zone, you take out the enemies, you pick up artifacts. If you spend too much time, this wave will come. It'll hit you. It transports you to a random location, and then all those artifacts reset, enemies reset, stuff like that. It happens every so many days. It's not difficult to complete. It's not like it's constantly happening, and you have a timer on it that tells you when it's going to happen. You kind of know, okay, I need to get out of the radius if I don't want to be reset or whatever. But there is a difficulty setting where you can change how often that thing happens, which I like, because I don't know if I like that I have to be, that in a really slow-paced game, I am sort of on a time limit because there's this thing, and I'm not sure if it's I don't know if the normal setting I like or dislike it yet, but I'm sort of just testing it out. But yeah, Into the Radius, I'll just have to play more of. It's a game of, it's really, really immersive. It can be really intense. Some enemies, you can hear them off in the distance. So there's this enemy it kind of looks like a spider, but it's not a spider. It's like imagine an octopus with no stomach/head, and then it just sort of flops on the ground with a bunch of wavy tentacles,
so
right? And then it jumps in the air. It jumps in the air and sort of comes at you, and it makes this like a nee, like this. That kind of sound like the Roadrunner. It does not sound like the Roadrunner. But anyway, it makes a loud sound that you can hear from a distance. So you kind of know if one is around, and if one starts to run at you, that sound gets louder and louder. Some enemies are able to sneak up on you, and it is legitimately scary. Because today I was exiting. So to exit a zone, you run in a cloud, then eventually you hit the cloud on a loading screen, so that it transports you out of it. So I was running towards this, and I was just moving, and all of a sudden I just hear footsteps. So I'm like, shit, spin around. And there are these enemies that are called mimics, and it kind of looks like a shadow, like it's a person. It looks like a human, but they're like
blacked out.
They're sort of blacked out and fuzzy, and they have this weird yellow orangish shimmer on their head, and these enemies just sort of like fast walk at you, and when they get to you, they like hit you with this lightning bolt. So anyway, I was walking, and I just started like, and I turned around 10 feet away, power walking right at me, and I felt really cool because I was able to whip out my pistol, and I was like, gah, and I like gunned him down real quickly. But in the recording, because I was just recording my gameplay, you can hear, not that I was frustrated, but just that I was a little flustered because I shot him a couple times and he died, and as I was reloading, I just said, fuck. It's like, son of a bitch. So anyway, and those guys are new. Those enemies are new because they will sneak up on you. One thing I dislike about the game a lot is enemies will detect you from pretty far away, and enemies will shoot at you from pretty far away, but the gunshots, there is no like realistic audio with a gunshot. If they're shooting at you from 5 feet away or a kilometer away, it sounds the same. And that's terrifying because you will be in a place and you're looking around, you're like, okay, there's nobody around me. And then you go to do something and you hear, bam! You're like, what the hell? And you look and it's some dude like a kilometer away.
Farmer John with his shotgun.
Yeah, not even close. And you're like, oh, okay. So, you do the Indiana Jones thing. You pull out your scope, hit him in the face, and you're fine. But just that initial shock is annoying because you think that an enemy just snuck up on you with a shotgun, but that's not necessarily the case. So there are things like that I wish, and that's an audio issue I've never seen in another game. And that completely breaks the experience for you because it's just a frustrating, because in Into the Radius, you don't have HUD. So everything you do, you're doing a lot of inventory. You have magazines. You have to put the bullets into the magazine. You have to put the magazine into the gun. Then you have to reload the gun properly, right? If you have a pistol, you put the magazine in. You have to put the slide back in order to put a bullet into the chamber, right? You have all this stuff, and it's for all the weapons. I have a PPSH. Got to do everything else with a PPSH, and you got to pull the bolt forward on the PPSH to load a round into the chamber to be able to fire. So, okay, all that stuff, all weapons work the same way. So it's annoying when you take all this time. So like, okay, these mags are full metal jacket. These mags are armor piercing. If I see an enemy with armor, I have to unload my magazine with armor piercing, or unload the full metal jacket, load the armor piercing. If I don't want to waste that full metal jacket that's in the chamber, I have to pull back the slide, eject that bullet, then shoot, grab that bullet off the ground, put it in my backpack, and that's all amazing. But it's annoying when you do all that and you feel like a stalker, and then a guy with a shotgun from a kilometer away scares the shit out of you. It's like, God damn it, I want it to be immersive and amazing and not silly like that. So, but today I had an amazing moment because that happened to me. I was fighting enemies with armor. It's like mystical armor. They have like yellow shimmer on them that you have to use armor piercing to kill. Right?
I know this is a little late to say this, I'm sorry, but I didn't realize that this seems... I thought it was more realistic.
It is and it isn't.
Yeah, right. You're talking about things that's like, okay, now we're going like into like heavy supernatural, like...
It's very supernatural, it's surreal. There are... when the art direction I really like because there are like train cars that are mid-crash, but they're frozen in time.
Right.
So the zone is like, it's very much closer to, when you think of Metro, maybe not so much Metro, but when you think of, I think Stalker is very much more grounded, I think. There are weird anomalies, but it's like the game gives you a sense they're grounded somehow in science.
Right.
As opposed to something like Stalker, the original movie, where it was all surreal, supernatural, emotional. The zone unveiled your inner desires. Like it was like it was only science fiction in the sense that it, but it wasn't like hard sci-fi. Like it wasn't like all these things had real scientific explanations. And Into the Radius sort of splits that in the middle because all of your weapons work realistically. Like if you played it for a little bit and you went through the shooting range, you think, oh, this is a tactical shooter.
Yeah.
And then you're fighting this weird alien looking enemy, right? So it's like, it does sort of have a weird juxtaposition, but I enjoy that. But anyway, so so I killed these enemies that had this armor, right? And I had a armor piercing magazine in my pistol. Armor piercing costs more, so you don't want to waste it, and you want to save it for the enemies that have armor, because Full Metal Jacket takes forever to kill these guys. So every single bullet counts. And I heard one of these spidery guys outside of a building, and he was hunting me because I could hear it sound right outside the wall next to me.
You knew you were there, was trying to get to you.
Yep. So, and I knew in my gun I had armor piercing, but these things don't have armor. So I was like, okay, I don't want to waste armor piercing. And these things move so quickly that I sometimes will waste a couple rounds because they jump around so quickly. So it's like, okay, so I felt so badass because I unloaded the armor piercing mag, loaded up the Full Metal Jacket mag, and then I aimed out a window. And then I remembered, oh wait, I have an armor piercing in the chamber. Pulled back the slide, ejected the armor piercing round, aimed again. The thing appeared outside the window. I shot, it jumped, hit the window. So there's like bars in the window. It hit and got tangled. And I just like, got a few rounds and it killed it, and it was just dangling from the window. Wow. And I felt so badass. I felt like I operated my weapon effectively. I took out this
high-speed low drag.
High-speed low drag, and then of course it's VR, so you'll see me like stumble around for the next minute, like looking at my watch. Because VR gameplay, it's like, you know, if you watch somebody play a VR game, it looks kind of silly. Because VR gameplay is always kind of silly. Now, in the moment, you don't feel like that. But then there's 5 seconds of VR gameplay that are always just like, oh my God, that's just the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life, you know? Like I have moments in Onward where it's like, you know, like I toss a magazine or toss a grenade, fire, reload real quick, and it looks all cool, but you don't see the next 5 seconds where I awkwardly have to bend down to pick up my magazine or something like that.
It's always fun to get those like clips because the afterwards are always just very awkward. Or like, you know, if I do something cool on PlayStation, I save my, you know, file. It's just like 10 to 15 seconds of me just standing there, like going through the menus after I've done something cool.
Right. I'm going to play more of Into the Radius. I hope it stays good. And I hope there's not too many early access things that are still left over, because it's just a game that I want to like and I want to get into. And I've waited a long time to go back and play it. So we shall see.
Real quick, about Baldur's Gate. There's something you need to remember, and we loosely talked about this earlier. Fighters are linear, and wizards and casters are quadratic. So soon your sorceress will be a god among men, and your fighter will be like, here I am with my sword.
Oh, well, okay, that's not something I knew. Hit the ad.
We want to give a massive shout out to the sponsors of this episode. They have been silently supporting us since the very beginning, and we felt it was time to give them some love. The like and share buttons have been at our side since episode 1 of the podcast. They can be found just beneath this episode. Please give them a click, it helps us greatly. If you're feeling lucky, click the bell icon to enter for a notification anytime we post new content. You may be surprised by what you get.
Microsoft says Call of Duty exclusivity wouldn't be profitable, and that PlayStation pays developers to keep games off Game Pass. This is all coming from documents to Brazil's Administrative Council for Economic Defense. According to its website, this council is a regulatory body whose mission is to ensure free competition. Also note, GamesIndustry.biz translated some of these quotes I'm about to read. The Verge just says they were translated from Portuguese, so there may be some little tiny differences, but I think overall these translations are pretty solid. So on Call of Duty exclusivity not being profitable, Microsoft said, quote, Sony's implicit concerns about Sony's content exclusivity about Activision Blizzard are unwarranted, and Microsoft's incentives are to continue making Activision Blizzard games available on rival consoles. In reality, not only is Call of Duty not a category of games per se, but it also faces strong competition from close quarters from games of multiple genres and types, end quote. I should have mentioned, so they're making their case to this Brazilian regulatory agency why them buying Activision Blizzard isn't a bad thing, isn't monopolistic, I don't want to use too many definite words, but, you know, shouldn't be frowned upon by a regulatory agency that regulates business. If that makes sense. Okay. Elsewhere, Microsoft said Sony pays to keep games off Game Pass. Quote, Microsoft's ability to continue expanding Game Pass has been hampered by Sony's desire to inhibit such growth. Sony pays for blocking rights to prevent developers from adding content to Game Pass and other competing subscription services. End quote. What do we think? Do we think Sony is wrong?
No.
Do we think Microsoft is right? Because I think there's a lot here that's really fascinating. I even wrote a little paragraph this morning. Because
they're both in the middle. Because, I mean, let's be honest, games or developers are being paid to go on to Game Pass and the Epic Game Store.
Yeah.
So, naturally, the counter to that is paying them to not do that, to remain independent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's two sides of the same business coin.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with it either. I think
it's interesting how it's being approached as the negative. They're like, what are you doing, Sony? Like the articles I've seen about this has been very like, Sony's the bad guy for paying to not be on this great service that Xbox has. At least that's how I have read some of the articles.
I don't think you're wrong. I do think it's interesting that instead of exclusivity in general, it's don't go to Game Pass specifically, right? And I don't know if there was like we haven't seen contracts, so I don't know if PlayStation does have like a thing where it's a generic don't go to any service, wink wink, that it's a streaming service, wink wink, like Stadia. You know, like something generic.
That's a game streaming service,
as opposed to hey, you can't go to Game Pass.
Yeah,
but you can go to whatever else if it's out there.
Mm-hmm.
You look like you're gonna say something.
Oh no, not really. I was just gonna say that they're probably a bit more blunt than don't go to streaming services. They're probably like, don't go to streaming services, parentheses, like, first one being Game Pass.
Sure, okay.
Yeah. And then eventually it's just Sony going to be paying other studios to come to, PlayStation Plus.
Yeah.
Deluxe or whatever they call it. I don't care.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
It's just PlayStation Plus minus. Plus. And I think that Xbox is absolutely correct on the Call of Duty exclusivity not being profitable. Best-selling franchise, 7 years and more running in the last decade. On top of that, that's also how he felt about Skyrim or Elder Scrolls particularly. They can make that exclusive if they want. I mean, they bought Bethesda, sure, but at the same time, I don't think it's as profitable.
No,
making it exclusive where it is putting it on all the consoles because it sold gangbusters on every console, not just Xbox. So I absolutely agree with them on the exclusivity for Call of Duty not being profitable.
Yeah, for big titles like Call of Duty, for Bethesda games, stuff like that, if it's already cross-platform or cross-console, they're going to keep it that way because like when they own Activision Blizzard and since they own Bethesda, now they're profiting off of Sony.
Sure. Yeah.
So why not let it happen?
Well, yeah, and also we have. I don't want to say it's not the same situation, but MLB The Show. Granted, like it was the MLB's pressure to Sony to put it on other consoles, but at the same time, that is a console or PlayStation franchise that is now on Nintendo Switch and Xbox because there was no other competitor for the baseball landscape.
Yeah. I wonder if we'll see a future one day, and I think this probably somewhat exists, but I guess maybe in a more laid out fashion, a version of the future where a game is released. Let's say Starfield. Let's pretend Starfield. Starfield comes out, right? And you know how back in the day it was console exclusivity, right? Where it's like it's on PC, but then people talk about exclusivity on consoles. Well, I wonder in the future, let's say Starfield comes out, let's say PlayStation has their service, Microsoft has their service, there's Stadia, there's Amazon Luna, right?
Steam exists.
There's a couple other companies that are doing something. All right, so let's say Xbox does this. Xbox says, okay, you can be on PlayStation, you can be on PC, you can be on Steam, on Epic, But game service exclusivity is Game Pass. So if you want to play this game in a game service, you're not going to Luna, you're not going to Stadia, you can only play it on Game Pass, or you can buy it at a premium price on your PlayStation 5.
Yeah.
Now, I think that probably exists in some form or fashion now, but not formally, right? Because right now there aren't a whole lot of streaming service. There isn't a game service that is on par with Xbox Game Pass, but PlayStation sort of has something similar now. So I think we could see maybe a future like that where you're paying for exclusivity on your streaming / game service platform, subscription platform, but elsewhere you're just releasing it like normal. Because yeah, I agree. I think if you do something like Elder Scrolls on one console, you could be losing more money than you're actually getting, right? And that goes against Microsoft's whole philosophy for the past 7 years, which is, content agnostic, man. It doesn't matter where it happens, man. Play anywhere, man. And that's great. We're all fine with that. You keep making Connor about to talk faces. So sorry.
I honestly wouldn't be against the game service exclusivity as long as it is available on a physical version or Steam.
Yeah.
And even then, that might not be as big as a boon as people think, because the average person themselves has a preference of where they want to play their games. Like one of my coworkers is vehemently against Xbox. He hates Xbox, and so he only plays on PlayStation, and he only enjoys PlayStation stuff. So you will at least have chunks of audiences out there who will funnel their money to the places they like most. So, and there are people who just don't like Game Pass, or who don't want to pay for it because they don't use it,
or don't see it as valuable as other people see it.
Or there's even people who are probably paying for Game Pass, they don't realize it, and they're still buying games, and that's probably a large chunk too. So
I had one other thought, and I don't really know where this is going. I guess I just think it's more interesting. So Microsoft this past... Oh, and that was the other thing we learned from this, was that the PS4 outsold the Xbox One.
Oh, yeah.
And we all knew that, but I think this was the first time Microsoft outright said it. I don't know the numbers, but I think it was from this report that Microsoft talked about it. So the repercussions of Don Matrick saying that, hey, if you're a service member working on a submarine, hey, get yourself a 360, boy. Like the repercussions of that have been, smash cut 12 years, and they're saying, PS4 outsold us.
Why don't you try playing Sunset Overdrive on that 360, huh?
So anyway, I only say that because in the interview, sorry, I should clarify. In the interview with Jeff Keighley, right? Don Matrick, he asked, what happens with people without internet connection? He says, we have a platform for that. It's the 360. And then Ed Keighley pressed him on it. Oh, so that's your message. Stick with 360. And he said, well, listen, I got somebody told me, well, I'm on a nuclear submarine and we don't have internet. And I'm like, you're talking about a United States serviceman saying you don't have internet? Fuck you. Like, that was your best example? A veteran? They already have a ton of problems. Service. Now you're telling me they have to stick with 360 on top of that? Come on, Don. Anyway, all right. I always found that hilarious. People talk about the stick with 360, but I still think the most iconic thing from that little tiny interview was, sorry, veterans, you don't get an next-gen Xbox. Anyway, okay, so back to this thing. So Microsoft had a ton of problems, right? Because... they didn't have the first-party games, and they didn't have the console that was winning. And the Xbox One does kind of suck. Even if Halo 5 was like the greatest Halo ever, the Xbox One does kind of suck anyway. So what happened? So they shifted to this platform agnostic stuff, right? Sony, on the other hand, has sort of the opposite problem. Sony just can't stop making good games. Like, if they tried, they'd make a game. If they didn't try, if they tried to fail, if they tried to make a Springtime for Hitler in Germany, right? Like in the producers, they would produce something amazing that's actually not offensive.
From a flop.
Yeah, they would get a hit from a flop. So they just can't stop doing that. But now they have this arch rival who has pivoted to something that Sony has been complacent with because they had PlayStation Now before, Xbox tried anything, but they didn't really do anything with it, right? So I wonder if we could also have a future where Sony is closer to Nintendo than they are to than Microsoft, right? So, and what I mean is, they buy the rights to Zelda. No. So what I mean is, Nintendo exists in this world because they have these games you can only play on Nintendo, and
they make the greatest handheld consoles,
and that's it, right?
Yeah.
So they exist in their own little bubble. So what if Sony sort of did something similar, where they created a Sony bubble where they keep these first party titles that are really important to them. They dabble a little bit in the PC market. They push games out once they've sold a lot on the original console. They push them out onto PC. God of War, Days Gone, Horizon, whatever, right? And then instead of trying to go toe to toe with Microsoft on this game service arena, they sort of sit in the middle, and they do kind of what Nintendo does, where their first party titles are really important to them, but then they also sort of dabble in the PC game service. So it's like a halfway point. If Nintendo's really rigid, right? And they're like, if you don't own a Nintendo, we will come to your house and kill you if you're playing an emulated version. Not if you're playing an emulated version, that's not our emulated version of a game, right? So that's Nintendo.
That's inferior.
Yeah, that's inferior. And then thank you, Richard. And then Microsoft's on like the other end, right? Microsoft's like, we don't care how you play our games, bruh. Like, it doesn't matter. Free love, man. And then in the middle is PlayStation, which is kind of.
Sorry, I can't wait for. I'm so sorry. I can't wait for Phil Spencer to come out. Yeah, I pirate all my games. Like, I don't know.
At Xbox, we don't believe in money. Whoa.
If you don't know, you can pay $20 on your Xbox One, and then you can go to developer mode. Emulators. You can just. They just let you do it.
Wait, I didn't know
yes, yeah. On your Series S and a Series X, you just pay $20. You can activate developer mode, and you can just do it.
What can you emulate?
Let you. Almost everything. It's a very good emulator. It is a very, very good emulator machine. Yeah.
Interesting. I haven't heard about this.
Yeah. Well, you have now. You exclusive. It's not exclusive, but it's a
exclusive
for the folks in the know. It's very, very helpful. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
I think it even does PS2 fairly well.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so so we're not even joking. They're really platform agnostic.
Yeah.
But anyway, so PlayStation in the middle. So that kind of future, I think, is maybe one where we're headed to, because I think we try and pit PlayStation and Xbox on the same level, like they're trying to do the same things, but they both have strengths where the other one has weaknesses, and vice versa, right? PlayStation has the games. They don't really have the service. Microsoft has the service. They also have Windows, but they don't really have the games list now. Halo Infinite has not panned out. I don't know when the next Gears is coming out.
No clue.
Forza, but that's it.
Yeah.
For like big Microsoft titles. What's the other one? Dead by Day, not the zombie one.
Redfall.
No, the other one, the other zombie one.
Oh, State of Decay.
Yeah, State of Decay, which is like their other, but that one's, that one has been off and on, not that great. So anyways, the point you guys know the point I'm trying to make. So maybe we see a future where PlayStation sits in the middle, because they still believe that they can sell a console, sell games for that console, people will buy that console, and then they can push it down onto other platforms later, make money there, and they compete sort of on a slightly lower level with the Game Pass, with their own subscription service, where they get smaller games and things like this. They're not going to knock it out, but they can cause a little bit of waves. That's my column.
Yeah.
And that's what I think. And speaking of Nintendo, are we ready to move on?
Let's do it.
Sure. Nintendo of America testers say they faced years of sexual harassment. This is a Kotaku story, spoke with 10 sources who had worked at Nintendo of America at different points in the last decade. They described a corporate culture where sexist behavior was commonplace and little was done to address it. There is a ton in this story. A couple, I think one or two sources spoke on the record, their names. They named people specifically. So there's a lot here we won't get into, so I highly recommend reading it. But sort of from 10,000 feet up, it talks about something that we've known of, which is sort of the power imbalances between the contract workers and the so-called red badges, which are the people that Nintendo of America employees versus Nintendo of America employees who are contracted through a third party. Aston Carter is the big third party company that we've talked about in the past. But then we have smaller stories about fewer people. Like one source says she was stalked by a male coworker who was a red badge, who told her that if she reported it, he'd get her fired. So you have power imbalances where you have not just we can't do things because we're not a red badge, but also I can't report to HR because I'm not a red badge and I'm easier to get rid of and that sort of thing, which is morally reprehensible. The story begins with Hannah, which was not her real name, who was a former Nintendo of America employee through Aerotech, a contracting firm. Hannah was a part of an employee chat called the Laughing Zone, meant to share memes and whatnot. Eventually, a male translator, who was also a Nintendo of America employee, but he was a red badge, so not a contractor, posted explicit content, specifically posted Reddit posts about why certain Pokemon were the best to have sex with, and posted why it's okay to be sexually attracted to a specific Genshin Impact character, despite them having a childlike appearance, voice, and personality. I'm not sure if they are a child in universe or not.
There are 4 or 5 characters who are
okay,
but
sure.
They're all adults, all of them.
Okay. The only
Not that matters.
The only repercussion the translator faced was being assigned a sexual harassment training. Aerotech had previously fired one of its contractors for making comments about the color of Hannah's underwear. So we have a couple different instances here. Yes.
I think you skipped the she screenshotted the comments, tried to escalate the
situation. I'm sorry. Thank you. Yeah, and she did screenshot the comments and tried to escalate the situation to HR, and that's why the person that posted these things ended up having the sexual harassment training, which she viewed as sort of a low ball attempt at.
They also told her to be less outspoken about it.
Yes, and they told her to be less outspoken about it. Aerotech now reorganized into Ashton. I think it was split into a couple different companies, and one of those companies is Aston Carter. I may be wrong there. But anyway, Aston Carter has had multiple lawsuits filed against it over the years. Just in 2021, the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, forced them to pay over $3 million to settle an anti-discrimination lawsuit. So that's that story. Meanwhile, a few months ago, as I was talking, we had another story about working conditions at Nintendo of America, and that was more about the power imbalances, not so much sexual harassment, but just the power imbalances between contract workers and red badges. Kotaku made a story, posted a story about it. There's a new complaint filed to the National Labor Relations Board alleging Nintendo and Aston Carter established coercive rules and retaliated and/or punished an employee for engaging in protected activity. The details at this point are vague. It will be a while before the NLRB decides whether or not the allegations are actionable. So a whole bunch of stuff being reported at Nintendo, and a whole bunch of stuff that we've kind of heard before. And the more I hear about these contracting firms, the less and less I think they are a good idea.
Oh, absolutely, because they don't have any dog in the fight, so to speak. Like ultimately, throughout they're just kind of the middleman, and they can just kind of. But I find it interesting that these stories break out, particularly towards Nintendo, and there's no shock or awe or anything. It's just kind of like, oh, there it is, finally.
Yeah.
Like, because there's no way that we've already gone through all the other companies, and all that's left was Nintendo, and here it is. Although it may be contracted, it's still under their umbrella at that time. So, of course, obviously something needs to be done. Something always needs to be done. But, once again, like you always say, it comes from the top. So that has to be dealt with. And it's just a matter of time. But this is where, of course, we always talk about labor unions coming in as well, which is good that we're getting those accepted more and more.
Yeah.
But it's a long fight. it sounds like.
Yeah, and if Nintendo and Activision Blizzard and what other companies don't like the idea of labor unions, they should have fixed the problems that plague their workplaces years ago. They should have cleaned up, and they didn't, and this is the result.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say this in every podcast. When an executive complains about how we think it's best to communicate directly with employees, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, maybe that's true, but you had your chance to fix the problem and you haven't done it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just, you're just hoping employees will just wait on you to get your shit together? At Ubisoft, they're looking at cutting their losses and leaving the company.
Right, yeah.
And they're going to sell it off to Tencent or some private equity firm or some shit, and they're not going to give a shit about these employees and their demands for better workplace conditions. Mm-hmm. So it's like, this is what has to happen for these places to be better. I don't know how, but I do know one part. We talked with Mark Dara about it, and we just asked Mark, who is a former BioWare developer, and we asked him, we said, hey, how do you fix this stuff? How do you fix bro culture? How do you fix this stuff going on? And he said, it was interesting because it's simple, but it's complex. And he said, you got to put people that don't look like us. He was talking about Richard, me, and him, who are generally white, cis, and straight into positions of power. You have to diversify. And that's where you start, right? Because it's hard to know how to empathize or do something about something when you know it's bad, but you've never experienced it, or you haven't been in the middle of an experience like that, right? So anyway, you can just say, well, diversity is the issue, but it's more complicated than that, the nitty-gritty details of it. And I think that's true. How else do you fix a culture? I don't know. I think maybe harsh, I don't know, I'm not going to try and solve problems, but I think that's a step that everybody understands is the way to go. Mm-hmm. And Activision Blizzard has tried it. They're a shitty company. They failed with Jen O'Neill, was her name?
Yeah, yes, she was the CEO for a co-CEO for a short amount of time, and then she dropped out.
Yeah. And Riot has tried to diversify its hiring process and stuff like that to try and fix its culture. But I don't know, man. Another way is I think you gotta HR needs to stop being I don't know, it's like, in mini golf, it's like obstacles are there to block you from getting it into the hole. Yeah. It's like HR is it's not really protecting the hole. It's not really there to protect you. It's there to stop things from getting bad.
HR exists to protect the company.
Right?
Yes.
So we need a different type of HR. We need HR companies that aren't there to protect Nintendo.
Those are called labor unions.
And that's the thing, right? Is at some point, when is that just a labor union? Because we've had multiple stories about the complete ineptitude, maybe even negligence of HR departments, and how they won't advance things, how they tell people, hey, you need to figure this out, stuff like that, which is completely ridiculous. I am not I am only saying things that we have read in stories and things that other people say, here's how you fix this. Because I cannot fix these problems. None of us at this table can fix these problems. They're societal problems and they're industry problems. I do think at some point people in power have to decide just to make things better. Labor unions can force change, but then you get into Activision Blizzard, trying to figure out, Activision Blizzard giving all contract employees raises a month after they formed a union or some shit like that, You get into politics like that. I'm sure every company has something like this going on at it at this point.
Of course.
Matter
of time before we hear about it. That's all.
Does anybody else? Do we have?
It is morally correct to steal from Nintendo.
Yeah, and that's not even a joke.
To pirate from Nintendo, it's morally correct. Yes.
I'm at the point where I'm not even sure that's a joke anymore.
There's two emulators called Citra and Yuzu that emulate 3DS and Switch very well. on your PC.
Everybody together.
It is morally correct. Oh yeah,
leave.
no, this one. I don't know.
Sorry,
I don't know this
no,
quote
we
yet.
were doing the wrong thing. We were doing the wrong thing. You
can do it because I don't know this quote yet.
Game preservation.
You can't leave game
preservation.
preservation to the IP owners. There we go. Do you want to do yours now?
No.
No?
I did it once.
Okay, well.
It's morally correct to steal from Nintendo once again.
All right, I'll give you
Use
this.
your Xbox Series S and X to do it.
I'll give you this. It's shorter, so it works better than mine.
No,
which is a poor.
No, yours is very correct.
It's just Frank's fault.
Frank's is very correct.
It's Frank and it's Kelsey and it's the game and it's the Video Game History Foundation. That's all this. We're just plagiarizing them. Hit the tidbits thing. A man discusses the news, but not like the big news, the little news. Little bit. This is the tidbits. I sounded like John Mulaney there for a second.
A tiny bit, yeah.
Would you hit the tidbits, please? I work in a garage.
No, it's pretty good, actually.
I was over on the bench.
My wife, this Timothy Chalamet son of a bitch. I say, I'm 6'1". He's only 5'8". The boy. Sorry, anyway.
These are the tidbits now.
Street smarts.
I'm going to be candid about the tidbits. I couldn't find any, so we just found some before the podcast. But there's a Half-Life 2 VR public beta that is going to be available next month. Very excited about that. Even though I still haven't played Alex yet. So my computer's not good enough to do it.
Yeah, I'm super excited too. And I've talked about Alex in the past, and I talked about this in the video I made about Alex. So Alex took Half-Life gameplay and sort of changed it around to better fit a comfortable VR.
Yeah.
So, for example, the antlions in Half-Life Alex, which are utterly terrifying, but they move slowly, and you get sights on your guns that highlight weak points in enemies.
Very cool.
So eventually what the game turns into is
target practice.
Yeah, these antlions walk at you and you have to shoot their like elbows and their legs come off and then they like try and crawl at you. Yeah, kind of like shooting necromorphs, exactly. And so it's a much slower, much more intense fight than fighting antlions in Half-Life 2, where they're just hopping all over the place, and it's much closer to like Doom because they're like buzzing above you, so the combat's different. But I am going to be fascinated about how that works in VR.
Yeah, for sure.
Because now I think there are ways to do that. I think a button that is going to be, a lot of video games have a jump, right?
Yeah.
A lot of video games, like, how do you do this thing? You put in a jump button. Now, a bajillion video games have a jump button. We've solved this problem in video game design, which is how do you get the player from here to here over an obstacle? You do a jump button. And there's a billion different ways to implement it. I think in VR, there's going to be something similar to jump buttons, which is a dash button, right? Some VR games have it, not all. But I think a lot of games, like a Half-Life game, could just add a dash button, which is you dash left, right really quickly. And in that time, gives you time to readjust, re-aim, which is similar to, like, in Doom, when you're running one direction or you're jumping the sky and you're turning at the same time. Things you can't really do in VR because you're just going to be moving a lot more slowly. And I'm also excited to see how the vehicle works.
Driving the buggy, little buggy.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that because if it's literally you get in and you're driving and you get out, that could be a lot of fun.
It could be, yeah. No, there's a lot of open space to drive around in the Half-Life 2, if I remember. Yeah, some of the best levels are. I think my favorite Half-Life 2 level is the one where it's the coastal highway. Yeah.
And you're just sort of driving.
You're on a hover boat, right? Or no, you're in the buggy.
Oh. Yeah. And there's like a house, and in this house is there's one of the zombies that has the big black spiders.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's like 5 of them, on these types of zombies.
Those are the improved head crabs, right? Like, aren't they just head crabs? Or they have 4? They're black. They have the 4 legs.
Yeah, and they're stronger. Faster. They have like a rattlesnake sound. They're terrifying. They hiss. It's basically my worst nightmare. But
our worst nightmare.
Our worst nightmare. But But anyway, and I love that level because because Half-Life has that really unique atmosphere where there's no music, so it's serene and very atmospheric.
Surprisingly quiet for what's going down in the city.
Yeah, and it fits the mystery of the whole thing, because you're not really sure. Well, you kind of know, you know how the head crabs got there from Half-Life 1 and all that, but there's so much more to Half-Life. You don't know what the Combine are precisely. You don't know who the suited guy, G-Man. You don't know who G-Man is, So there's some mystery there. So when you're driving in the Doom buggy and you're thinking about those things and you're listening to the waves and stuff like that, it's really contemplative, really creepy. And then you go into a house and it's just this one enemy in this house, and it's really, really good game design. And VR, I think that would be really freaking awesome. Yeah. So I'm excited.
Half-Life 2 is an incredible game.
And there is a Half-Life mod on
Yes, on SideQuest.
On SideQuest.
Yeah.
Have you tried it?
I have not, no. I actually still have not played Half-Life 1.
I would recommend it.
I've tried several times. That intro is so terrible.
You don't like it?
No, it's boring. Just standing around and can't do anything until you're done talking. I understand it's setting the mood and introducing everything, but it's just like, all right, I got to sit on this tram for like a half hour.
Nothing is worse than Quake 4. Where your character, you crash, and you wake up, and there's like a battle, and then explosion, and you're back down.
Yeah.
And you wake up, and there's like the battle's still going, and then another explosion, and you're back down. You're like, can I get up and shoot already, please?
How concussed can I get before I die?
Right, yeah.
You go down a thing where everybody's getting like ripped apart, right? Isn't that in Quake 4?
Yeah.
Or is it,
One of your pass outs, yeah.
Yeah, right.
It's basically like the Borg.
Tidbits is where we just talk about games now.
I'm sorry. Half-Life and 2 in VR, that sounds really fun.
It's a project that's been worked on, they say, for the last decade, which doesn't sound right to me, but whatever. That's what their website said. But it's almost ready for the public beta. September, the mod will be available for everyone to download and play, and be played from start to finish, and apparently is very enjoyable according to the developers. The creators want to release the mod on Steam, but they're unsure if they can get the approval process complete before the date that they would like. At that point, it'll probably just be a patch that users will have to implement themselves.
Okay, so it's not. So it's a mod.
It's a mod, yeah.
But Half-Life 2, does Half-Life 2 have Steam mods, have Workshop enabled?
Oh yeah.
It does?
Yeah, I'm very certain it does. Doesn't?
Okay.
If it didn't, that'd be weird.
That would be weird, but now I'm realizing I don't know off the top of my head.
But you can also just install patches and mod yourself, like to Steam games.
Yeah, but that's not as easy.
God. Just drop it in a folder and you're done.
Was that it for Tidbits?
No, there's a game where you can play as a squirrel with a gun.
Coming out.
I saw this clip and I was like, that was a really funny situation that happened. And then a couple days later, it's like, oh no, this is actually a game that's being made.
Yeah.
It's created in Unreal 5. A game will have you play as a squirrel who attains different weaponry, to terrorize unsuspecting people in different spaces. I love that. Anything can be a video game.
Yeah.
Anything. And it's interesting because it's I don't think anything could be a book, I'm sure, but I don't think it would work as well as a video game.
No.
Because nothing can be, not anything can just be a movie. Jupiter Ascending proved that.
Whoa, taking a shot at Jupiter Ascending out of nowhere, somewhere Channing Tatum's
it's low-hanging fruit.
Almost had it. Okay. Well, because games because the dynamics in gameplay and emergent gameplay, how do you do emergent filmmaking? A movie can't be emergent because what happens, right?
Not unless you're A24.
Oh, jeez. Wait, are you referencing something specifically?
The studio A24. They have a bunch of crazy movies that are just crazy.
Yeah. Okay. But even A24's powers, even for all the movies called Pig that theirs was
goat,
lamb, doesn't matter.
Lamb, whatever.
Animal.
Yeah, it was one of those animal movies.
Insert barn animal here.
Yeah. Even with A24's power, you're still shooting something with a camera, And then like that's all that, it's not like the audience can, but with video like that, like I was telling you today about, unloading the gun, pulling back the slide and all that was a dynamic situation that is incredibly difficult to recreate because, anyway. So that's the nature of video games. That's a really long-winded really long-winded way of saying I agree with you, Richard. But did you see the GIF of what you can do with larger weapons with this squirrel?
No, I didn't see that one.
So there's the squirrel has a Mac 10, and it's like rocketing itself into the air by shooting, and it's like on top of the Mac 10.
That's very unrealistic, but yeah, hell yeah, he'd be spinning. Is what he'd be doing.
I need desperately for somebody to take the scene from Apollo 13 when they launch and then like have the squirrel lifting off in the music and then cut to mission control, and then when it cuts back to Tom Hanks just cut to the squirrel again. I think that'd be phenomenal.
So they think it's gonna be the next goat simulator where it's popular for 5 minutes and then forgotten until they do something wild with it again.
It could be. Yeah. It'll be very memed, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
It's already,
Last two tidbits that I'm rolling into one because they both involve video games and movies. But Dan Trachtenberg, the director of Prey, who originally was he was in the video game industry. Now he's a director. Has said that his new movie Prey, which is like a Predator prequel, has very, very big inspirations from God of War, particularly with a couple weapons that are used. Well, 2 instances that are used in the movie. I'm not going to spoil it here, but
okay.
Predator just walks around with a Leviathan axe.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, Leviathan axe is one and the shield is the other.
Yeah, I was going to say those are the 2. I've actually watched the movie. Yeah. I would recommend it. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen it. I really want to see it. Yeah.
It is a good movie. It was interesting. I'll tell you this about movies. I like it when today with a lot of movies, there's like a Zack Snyder movie, right? It's like you start a Zack Snyder movie and it's like the first 5 seasons of Game of Thrones, all those plot lines, that is one Zack Snyder movie. There's just like a gajillion plot lines. There's all kinds of stuff going on. But Prey is really good because it's very simple. Like it sort of strips everything down and it's like, this is the premise. Sure, what's going to happen. It doesn't matter because this is what we're going with. And that makes it a very enjoyable. You don't have to worry about like 6 different plot lines and
and a lot of times that can create something. If a movie is just, I'm not going to say the bare minimum, but if it's just what it is, that usually can make a movie very, very good. Yeah, in my opinion.
Not perfect, but I would recommend it. But yeah, the axe and the shield are the 2.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But secondly, the director of the already greenlit Ghost of Tsushima movie has stated that Sony is on board with backing them on the fact that they want to have a complete Japanese cast. Why wouldn't you? But also have it all completely in Japanese.
Yes, that'd be awesome.
He says to try to direct not only in my language but somebody else's and culturally shift my mindset to bring apart that in a cool way will still entice Western audience. And that's what he hopes to do. And I hope he is successful in that instance because there are a lot of lots of foreign media is now extremely popular in America. Nobody really has a problem with subtitles anymore. At least I would hope. I would love to see this happen because that's the way it should be.
A bit of a hot take about this, but I don't think it should be fully Japanese. I think if they're going to introduce Mongolian characters, they should be Mongolian.
Oh, sure. Yeah. They could do it like, I forgot which movie did it.
Oh, John Wayne. Just kidding.
Yes, the Conqueror, yes.
Just get a freaking John Cena, get him.
Saddle up, Mongolians.
Let me tell you something, partner.
Anyways, shit. God damn it, John Wayne.
I'm sorry.
No, that's a fact. Oh, I forgot which movie did it, but there was a movie. It's a very popular movie. I think it won either Oscars or awards that it started out in the language, but as the movie went on, it slowly went into English.
Yeah, I know it
because it was just like
It was called The Hunt for Red October.
Oh, it was Hunter Red. Yeah.
And there's a scene. It's a really good scene where it's a movie I really like. But it's a scene where they're speaking on it's aboard the...
Speaking of characters who be playing somebody they shouldn't be.
Sean Connery.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not the hunt for the red, it's the hunt for the Red October.
The most Scottish Russian man. Yeah. But anyway.
Do Svidonya.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah. Anyway. So it zooms in on a guy's face. And I think, okay, I read this somewhere in like a comment. I don't know if it's true. But Armageddon is apparently the same word in both English and Russian.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. But anyway, so it zooms in on a guy's mouth as he's reading a Russian memo for something.
Yeah.
And he says Armageddon, and then he starts to speak English, and it starts to zoom out. So the movie is telling you these people are speaking in Russian, but just know in your mind's eye they're speaking Russian, but they're going to... that was something I didn't like about Prey, was I wish, because they're Comanches. I wish the movie was in Comanche. I thought that would have been awesome. They use some words in Comanche, but the movie was in English, and I guess there's a Comanche dub.
There is, yeah.
But I really wish they would have shot it in Comanche, because that would have been awesome. But anyway, so I'm glad they did that. And is the actor gonna...
He should.
I think he should.
He should.
Yeah.
I think he absolutely should, yeah. I think the whole cast should just... You got the cast. Just do that.
Hire them.
Yeah, because the cast was great in that game. I loved the cast in that game. Yeah. Okay, are we?
That's it. Yes, yeah. Sorry, that's it for Tidbits. I should say something when I'm done with that.
Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse, Patreon.com/The Gaming Discourse. Go check out the Ruins Magnus review. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.